5 video game bosses that keep you up at night. Playing video games is a pleasurable endeavor, whether it's the narrative, the gameplay, or even the challenges you face while playing, among other factors. But every now and then we come across a boss on a stage or at the end of the game that scares us. In other words, there's always a moment where we'll be thinking about it for hours on end. Here are some of the most sinister and tense bosses in the history of games. 1. Psycho Mantis. Metal Gear Solid. Older fans of games and, of course, devotees of the Metal Gear saga will surely remember this boss. After all, not everyone at the time really knew how games worked. In fact, this was a trick that involved the player's memory card, and it haunted many gamers at the time. Psycho Mantis was born in a small village in the midst of the Cold War. His mother died giving birth to him, which made his father resent and hate him. In addition, he was born with a disfigured face. He discovered his powers and his father's true emotions one day while accidentally reading his mind. Disgusted with his father's inner thoughts and fearing that he would be killed, Mantis burned down his own village, killing his father in the process. Psycho Mantis was a powerful practitioner of psychokinesis and telepathy, with Nastasha Romanenko considering him to be one of the most powerful psychics in the world. He was capable of moving objects with the power of thought, spinning them around himself to create a makeshift barrier, or throwing them towards an opponent. He was also capable of generating a ball of psychic energy, as evidenced during his battle with Solid Snake. Through telepathy, Mantis could read people's minds and learn about their pasts. This power could even be extended to mind control, which he used to sway members of the Next Generation Special Forces into joining Foxhound's revolt and to force Meryl to attack Snake. However, his telepathic abilities could be rendered ineffective if his subject was either strong-willed or possessed surgical implants in their brain, as evidenced by his failure to defeat Solid Snake in battle and to read Donald Anderson and Kenneth Baker's minds, respectively. Because of his constantly wearing a gas mask to ensure he focused on his psychic powers, he frequently had a rasping breath accompanying him. As Tredegery Bennock, he possessed tousled red hair and wore a gas mask and a black straitjacket. By the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Mantis possessed an emaciated body and a hairless skull, while sporting a black bodysuit and a trenchcoat. He had a misshapen nose, with surgical scars and stitching adorning his cranium and lower face, causing Mantis to despise his own appearance to such an extent that seeing any depictions of his disfigured face would force him to break his concentration. 2. Lady Comstock's Ghost. BioShock Infinite. There are some spirits that really get attached to our world, turning into terrible headaches for those who stick around. And this is exactly the case with Lady Annabelle Comstock, the late wife of Columbia's founder. She is hard at work, sending hordes of soldiers to finish off Booker DeWitt, controlled by the player. By the time her weakness is discovered, the player has gone through a lot of hassle. Before becoming Lady Comstock, Annabelle Watson was simply a devotee of Comstock. In her life before Columbia, she selfishly took advantage of the numerous suitors who admired her. Comstock offered her redemption for her sins and his hand in marriage. She took on the elevated position of First Lady of Columbia and spread Comstock's teachings to its citizenry, who deeply respected her. Lady Comstock also designed the Colombian flag, and some devoted believers claimed that she sewed every single Colombian flag in existence. Her audio logs affirm Lady Comstock's deep admiration and love for Zachary Comstock for forgiving her sins and giving her another chance. However, she began to question her faith in her husband after seeing how cruel and unforgiving he could be to those who opposed him. Comstock, believing that he must father a child for Columbia to prosper after his death, had Robert and Rosalind Ludus seek out his blood heir from an alternate universe, as their tear-creating machine had rendered him sterile. Lady Comstock quickly became suspicious of this child, Elizabeth, and accused Rosalind Ludus of being the mother. Rosalind denied the claim and explained the child's true origins, which Lady Comstock had trouble believing. Lady Comstock, confused and angered, decided she would need to break her silence about the child after 2 years of compliance. Comstock had her killed, presumably by way of strangulation, before she was able to reveal the true nature of Elizabeth's birth and framed their scullery maid Daisy Fitzroy for her murder. The populace was devastated by the news of her assassination and sought to glorify her memory. Like a Catholic saint, her body was preserved in a memorial shrine, while her belongings, such as her trademark blue dress, were treated like holy relics. Comstock, meanwhile, used this frame-up to galvanize his persecution of the Vox Populi. Booker DeWitt occasionally encounters zealots of the Lady, upper-class devotees of Lady Comstock, as enemies. They express their remorse over her untimely death through dialogue, as well as the coffins they chained to their backs. Elizabeth first discovers Lady Comstock's connection to her at the memorial at the Hall of Heroes, while she and Booker pursue Cornelius Slate. The notion that Lady Comstock and Zachary Hale Comstock are her parents confuses and distresses her. Later, in Finkton Docks, Elizabeth finds Lady Comstock's personal diary in Cornelius Slate's locker. At some point, Slate had gotten close enough to steal it and hid the diary in his locker when he worked for the company. Within, Elizabeth finds an entry from shortly after her birth. It reveals that, believing Elizabeth to be Comstock's bastard child, Lady Comstock had the infant sealed in Monument Island, unwilling to raise the child in her home. This marks the beginning of Elizabeth's hatred toward Lady Comstock. 3. Sephiroth. Kingdom Hearts 2. Here the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VII is one of those bosses that give no room for error. The smallest of slips can be fatal, as the villain's attacks are relentless, with devastating force. In whatever franchise he appears in, Sephiroth knows very well how to leave his mark. Sephiroth is the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake and one of the major antagonists in its extended universe. In spin-off appearances, Sephiroth is depicted as Cloud Strife's archenemy and is seen as a symbol of Cloud's troubled past that haunts him. Sephiroth is a former renowned soldier who became twisted. Before his fall from grace, Sephiroth was one of the most lauded success stories of the Shinra Electric Power Company's soldier program. His successes in the field of battle during the conflict surrounding Shinra's bid for global domination led to his status as a celebrity war hero and the poster boy for both the Shinra military and the company's soldier program. Learning of his true origins drove him insane, causing him to be driven by a desire to destroy the world. Sephiroth is briefly a party member during a flashback in the original Final Fantasy VII and is both the penultimate and final boss. As Sephiroth's records were sealed by Shinra, most guides do not give any personal details on him. The European and North American manuals give his details as unknown, except for his job as a top-ranking soldier officer, that he fights with long swords, and his height. Japanese manuals omit even these details. The Final Fantasy Art Museum cards from 2001 and the Final Fantasy VII Ultimania Omega released in 2005 also give these details as unknown and do not list a height. His birthplace is listed as unknown. The Final Fantasy VII 10th Anniversary Ultimania gives his birthplace as a question mark, but later in his section states he was born in Nibelheim. Volume 2 of the Final Fantasy 25th Memorial Ultimania or Final Fantasy Ultimania Archive released in 2012 lists his birthplace as Nibelheim. It is unknown where the height from the localized manuals originated. This is the same for Red 13, whose height is absent in all the aforementioned Japanese publications, but present in the English manuals. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, he is much taller than what was listed in the localized manuals for the original version, as he is taller than Barret, who is listed as being 197 centimeters tall. Although Sephiroth's exact age has never been stated, it can be approximated with evidence from the timelines. 4. Kai Leng. Mass Effect 3. This is one of the most hated characters in the entire franchise, largely because of his arrogant personality and his fighting style. Based on dodging and attacking, his style is annoying because it takes a lot of effort to destroy him. There are personal reasons for the player to seek his extermination, but they contain spoilers. Either way, the reward for annihilating this being from the face of the galaxy is immense and satisfying. While little is known about Kai Leng's early life, Alliance records show that he enlisted in the Alliance military on November 14, 2172 at the age of 16, although his credentials were faked at the time. Leng's prowess in combat and xenophobic nature drew the attention of the Illusive Man, and Cerberus helped liberate Leng from prison after he was incarcerated for murder. The Illusive Man used Leng as his best wet work operative, an assassin for over a decade, realizing he was not only ruthless, but discreet and methodical. Leng became the Illusive Man's most trusted agent, working as an infiltrator and assassin. His cybernetic modifications appear to include Cerberus's Phantom Class implants. 5. Pyramid Head. Silent Hill 2. Red Pyramid Thing, more colloquially known as Pyramid Head, is a humanoid monster in the Silent Hill franchise, first appearing in Silent Hill 2. His red helmet and butcher's attire echo the executioners of the town's past, who worship the Angel of Rebirth Voltiel. He is a manifestation of James Sunderland's guilt and desire for punishment, existing to keep him human and help him remember his past actions. His signature weapons are the Great Knife and the Great Spear, instruments of James' inner torment. After James kills Eddie Dombrowski in self-defense, a second Pyramid Head materializes. Despite criticism from Masahiro Ito and Tom Hewlett, the character was reimagined in Silent Hill: Homecoming as the bogeyman Akka the Shadowed One, a creature of vengeance and justice who inflicts punishment on those who deserve it. The films and novels have extended his role to that of a protector and servant of Voltiel. Since its creation, Pyramid Head has become one of the most well-known and iconic monsters in the franchise, turning into something of a mainstream and flagship figurehead for the series. There is a supernatural power that surrounds Silent Hill, Maine, that has the ability to manifest elements of the unconscious mind. In the early history of the town, Native Americans used this to seemingly communicate with both nature and their dead relatives. Their land was eventually stolen from them by European settlers. Because of the town's power, a mysterious cult began to form that took control over much of its infrastructure. One of the deities they worship is Voltiel, who serves as an angel of rebirth and a being close to God who has appeared in many forms throughout the town's history. The cult began performing ritualistic executions, wearing red hoods and an executioner's outfit modeled after him. Right before Mary Shepard Sunderland contracted a lethal disease, 3 years before the events of Silent Hill 2, she and her husband James Sunderland visited the town of Silent Hill on vacation. One of the locations they visited was the Silent Hill Historical Society, which contained paintings and artifacts relating to the executioners of the town's past. One such painting in particular, Misty Days, Remains of the Judgment, which is a stylized portrayal of an executioner standing among caged corpses, stuck in James' mind. Thank you for watching this video until the end. If you like this kind of content, please leave a like. Is there any boss that you think we missed? Please leave a comment and tell us a little about it.